So we're gonna do a couple back stretches. This is not meant to diagnose. This is not meant to necessarily cure an issue, but we wanna see if this is going to feel good in certain positions, what feels good, maybe what doesn't feel good, and just use this as a bit of a way to hone in where some things are at and what's going on. With these, you can hold these for about 30 to 60 seconds. I'm gonna keep them a little on the shorter side just for time. And we'll go from seated to floor, and you can do this in any particular order, it doesn't really matter. So the first one would just be a forward fold. So we're seated in a chair about 90 degrees, and then you just lean forward as much as you feel comfortable. Option to have your hands on the floor, or you could even have like blocks underneath, so that way you feel supported. It doesn't have to be all the way down, but just as far down as you feel comfortable. And if this feels okay, you just hold this position for about 30 to 60 seconds, like I said. And pretty much for all of these, you're gonna breathe in as deep as you can. Try to fill the space on the sides of your ribs. So breathe, and then exhale, breathe out, and maybe sink a little bit lower if that feels okay. And if it doesn't, don't push it, don't force something. Sometimes you might feel a little, especially if you're doing this cold, you might feel a little bit of a stretch. So let's say you have your circle of comfort. You want to be at the most just on the outside of that circle of comfort at any given point. If it feels too intense, come out of it, and then maybe go back into it for just a little bit and see if it changes. And if it still feels painful, then come out of it. So it should never be more than about a 3 on the scale of pain or discomfort. Even 3, I think, would be a little bit extreme for what we're doing. So maybe even a 1 or a 2 of like, oh, that feels like a decent stretch, but it's not painful, this is fine. Second, what we're gonna do is just cross-legged. If you can get your leg up, and then it might be up here, that's okay. Just notice if it's here, and that's where it's gonna be. And maybe it easily gets down to parallel, or maybe you can even have it hanging off a little bit, also totally fine. Just paying attention to what that's like and what that feels like in the hip and what that feels like in the back. So if you're like this, it might mean you have some restriction here, and that might show up in your back. So we're just paying attention to this, and again, you can fold over as much as you feel comfortable. I would also like to say that there are numerous variations of all of these stretches. I'm just showing a couple ones, or a few basic ones that I feel are pretty easily accessible and that we can use to help identify some trouble spots. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Again, pay attention, maybe on one leg it's higher, the other one's lower. This one is a little bit higher than the other one. And then I'm gonna lean forward and just see how that feels. Now I'm resting my elbow here and kind of pushing down. For me, this feels really good. This might not feel good to you, so you can even have your arm back here so that you're not putting a lot of extra weight on here if that doesn't feel good. However, feel free to do this, and you should feel a little bit more of a stretch in the glute. Again, we're not going above a 3, probably around a 1 or a 2. And setting back down, raise your hands up, and then twist over to your left so that your right hand comes on your left knee, and then you just turn around. And you don't have to turn like, you don't really turn yourself all the way around. Just gently rotate so you're looking off to the right. And maybe over your left shoulder if that feels okay. You don't want a lot of tension through here. So if you're just looking maybe in this direction, and then gently seeing how far you can rotate over. Keeping that spine nice and straight. So you're sitting up and just turning upward. Almost like you're turning on a pole. Breathe, make sure you can breathe comfortably in this position. And then when you're ready, just slowly come out of it. Make sure it's slow, don't spin out of it. You can have your arms up, and then over. If that's too much in the shoulders, you can also just maneuver over, and turn, again, looking with your eyeballs this way, and then see how far you can get over without cranking your head. And you might notice one side is easier than the other. Pay attention to see if you're bleeding, forward, backward, side to side. You want to try to stay nice and upright for this. There we go. We're going to push this out of the way. You could also have a block underneath of you. Obviously, you could have a pillow or a blanket. That would be perfectly fine to do as well. Here, just on the side. So, pretty much the same way that we started as last time. Knees are bent, and then you can lean forward and see how that feels. You could have your hands on the shins or the thighs, and then just start slowly go forward. See where you feel the sensation. Down towards your knees, breathing in and out. Have yourself supported. Again, your forehead does not have to touch the knees. You'll see the super flexible people who are like, I'm not going to be able to do it good. And we're going all the way down. Don't feel like you have to. It's just going to be a passive fold, let gravity do a little work, and just hang out here and relax as long as this feels okay. If it doesn't, come back on. Even if you want to have like a pillow or a blanket underneath your legs so that they don't hyperextend like this. They do not have to be flat on the floor. Bend the knees, create a nice little relaxed hamstring right here. Perfectly fine to do. If you know you have tight hamstrings, you can do a hamstring stretch where you're doing this. So bringing the foot up, grabbing behind the thigh, and gently bringing it back. Not so much for the back, but can be helpful for the hamstring if you know you have really tight hamstrings. One that I would recommend is bringing the knee in for the back. So you have a fairly straight leg, and then bringing the knee in. We'll often say we'll say to the chest. It's actually going to be more towards your armpit because you have more space. Though you might feel more comfortable bringing it a little to maybe more toward the chest, or maybe out toward the armpit a little bit more, even outside the armpit. Then you can play with this back and forth, drawing up as much as you can. You should feel a stretch right through here. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Again, paying attention if you feel anything in the hip flexor, so in the front, see how that feels. Then I'm just going to bring this foot up so you can do that figure 4 stretch. You can also have a towel or a band to grab behind your thigh and bring it in. That is also an option. Another nice thing to do, especially with sciatica, is you do foot flossing. So you raise the leg, point the toe, bring it back, heel drops down toward the glute, come back up, point the toe, flex it back, back and forth. You do this on both sides. So let's do it on the other side. Take the heel up, point the toe, foot, point the toes back, heel toward the glute, up, point the toes, toes back toward the shin, heel to glute, back and forth. Then we can do a nice little two-legged, so you're bringing both knees up toward your chest. Back of the head is staying in, so we're not trying to do like a crunch. The entirety of my back is nice and supported, and I'm just bringing my knees up, trying to lengthen my tailbone down if that feels okay. You could even do some little rocks here, either back and forth, side to side, make little circles. See how that feels. Then you can lay the arms long, knees together, and down. And you can just hang out here. I'm going to show you a different exercise on the other side. Otherwise, you can just flip this to the other side. Inhale, bring the knees up, and either up and around and down, or extend, roll, and then come up on the other side. Because this might put a lot of strain on your back. So you can do it where you're just bend, extend the legs, roll, bring it back in, and then off to the side. If you have a small foam roller, you can also use this foam roller to see if you've noticed some hip discrepancy. This is a little more advanced, but essentially you prop yourself up, and then ever so slightly, I'm wearing black pants, so I don't know if you can really see it, but my top knee, I'm actually pushing over, or excuse me, my left knee, I'm pushing over my right knee slightly. I'm just rolling it back and forth, maybe a quarter of an, maybe like half an inch. It's not very big. And this may feel good in the hips, and it might not. This would be one, if you know you have a hip discrepancy, you can try this, just as an option. You could try a wide-legged forward fold. So this one I would probably recommend being propped up. I'm not going to get very far. So feet are out to like the corners of the room. They're just out as much as I feel comfortable. And then trying to pancake forward, so you're reaching forward, seeing how that feels. And you might be able to get really low. You might be able to grab your shins or your ankles and get even lower and bend. Bring your chest down toward the floor. I can't get very far. This is about as far as I'm going. And then I can't go any further without causing my hips a lot of pain. Some people can go obviously a lot further. And you might just be here. That's totally fine. Just pay attention to how that feels and where your restrictions are. From here, bring your the right sole of your foot over to your left thigh. As much, if you can get it in, great. If it's more like out here, that's perfectly fine, just depending on what's comfortable for you. And then reach your left arm up and over. And wherever it lands is fine. If you're a little more flexible and this doesn't cause pain, you can reach for your foot, your ankle, but you might only be at your knee. That's absolutely fine. Doesn't really make a difference. You could even plant it on the inside of your thigh for a little support. That's totally fine. And then we want to reach the right arm up. And there's two variations for this. You can either reach over. So I'm keeping my chest open to like the front of the room, or the camera. And then I'm reaching over, like I'm trying to reach for my foot all the way over here. And that's really stretching my entire side, especially down on the right side of my back, down to my head. If this is too intense, either in the shoulder or the back, rotate, or even just start rotated, so you're facing your left leg, and then you can do this, and play around with your torso moving. And again, you might be up here, and just playing around with this. You might be down at your feet, playing around with this movement. You're still gonna get that stretch through here, it's just not quite as intense as this stretch. This is more intense on both the shoulder, my ribs, and my quadratus lumborum right down here in the lower back. So play around with that. Other side, same thing. You just bring the leg in, right arm comes up, plant it down wherever it falls. If you know you can reach your toes, you can stretch a little bit, and then reach up, and then over. And see on my right side, this is a lot tighter. On my left, I can get a lot further, but again, play around with where you're at, and you can always turn your torso and then grab. That'll be just fine. And again, holding these for about 30 to 60 seconds. The final thing that you could also do with your chest is going to be a sort of a child's pose. There's two things I'm going to show you with the child's pose. So child's pose is knees can be actually fairly wide. They can be, for me, they're going to be actually a little bit wider than my torso. So I can comfortably fit my torso between my knees. Some people you'll see they'll have their knees more together and then folding over. Find what's comfortable for you and your hips. Arms are going to be extended, and you can have a block or a towel underneath your forehead, or if your forehead touches the floor, perfectly fine. Sending your hips back, reaching your palms forward, and you can piano hand your hands over to the left, and then over to the right. Again, holding each one for about 30 seconds, where you're just going to hold it here, take some deep breaths, go off to the other side, and stretch. Some people find it helpful to put one hand over